This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
We are wrapping up this season of the podcast with an episode today about how to be a good dad. See, my wife, Tori, is over 8 months pregnant, and our due date is December 8th. So the baby, our firstborn baby boy, should be coming sometime within the next 3 weeks. And I wanted to wrap up this season of the podcast with an episode about how to be a good dad. And so I brought my older brother, Andy, on, who, of course, has the same dad as I do, and the trusted co-host, Tom Griffin, on. Tom has 3 kids. Andy has 1 and is expecting his second near the same time that Tori and I are expecting our first. And so I wanted to bring these guys on the podcast to talk about what it means to be a good dad and to give me advice on becoming a first-time father. I think it's a really fun way to close out this season of the podcast because, frankly, I need a break right now to prepare the house, to prepare the stroller, to put together the crib, to get the nursery ready to go, to add to our family. Of course, here on the podcast, we are called the Moonlight Graham Show, and the movie Field of Dreams has such a great father-son story, such a great father-son connection. And I have 2 grandfathers and a father that I love dearly, and have been great influences in my life. And I wanted to do an episode on the topic of fatherhood to make sure that I'm prepared to be the best father that I can be. And Tom and Andy, they stepped up to the plate. I think they offered a bunch of really good advice. We had fun talking about not only our own fathers, but also Tom's kids and Andy's kids and what it means to be a dad and a really good husband to a pregnant wife. And hopefully for guys out there, if you have kids or you're expecting kids or you're hoping to have kids, some of this will resonate with you and you can relate to some of the conversations that we have. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's Dad Pod. And of course, you guys know the drill. If you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. And guys, we would love it if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. The next time you'll be hearing from me, hopefully I'll have a healthy baby boy in this world and my wife will have a really smooth delivery. So once again, guys, thank you guys and girls so much for subscribing to the podcast, for listening to the podcast, for supporting the show with buying our shirts and buying our hats and sending us emails, encouraging emails every week. We love that type of stuff. And I really do appreciate all of your support. It means a lot. This podcast has been a ton of fun. You know, we've done 184 episodes at this point. It's been a ton of fun for me to do thus far. I hope we'll be able to keep it going even in some of the sleepless nights that I have ahead. So thank you so much for your love and your support. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas season. I hope you're all able to stay healthy during this pandemic because you all mean a lot to us here on the Moonlight Graham Show. So enjoy today's episode that wraps up this season of the podcast. Joining me for tonight's episode about dads, I got the trusted co-host, Tommy Griffin, and of course, my older brother, Andy, is back. Andy, it has been a while since you've been on the Moonlight Graham Show. Welcome back.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know what I did to deserve to be welcomed back on the pod, but it's good to be back in the saddle.
And of course, the topic of today's episode is how to be a good dad. You know, it's a dad pod. How to get a good dad pod is maybe the goal of this episode. Tom, out of us 3 here, you are the first dad. You were the first guy. Actually, out of everybody involved in Moonlight Graham, you became the first dad. So what was it like to become a dad for the first time, Tommy?
Oh, man. That was so my oldest is almost 9 years old. So basically like approaching 10 years ago, we found out, you know, my wife's pregnant with our oldest and we had wanted to have a kid. I mean, we were excited. We'd been married for a few years, but I just think like the reality of having a baby doesn't sink into the dad as fast as the mom, right? Because she's changing and feeling everything. I think as the dad, it's like, just curiosity, you know, it's just excitement and you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. There is like a portion of like becoming a father where you're a father way before it feels like you're a dad. And I'm kind of in that mode right now where Tori is 8 months pregnant. She has had this human growing inside of her for the last 8 months. So she's been able to experience being a mom, but I haven't really been able to experience being a dad yet, right? I can feel the kicks, I can see the growth, but I haven't really had that like dad factor yet. Andy, how about you? What was it like to become a dad? It was just almost exactly 2 years ago when Leo entered the world. What was that experience like for you?
That's right. Yeah, my son Leo just turned 2 yesterday. The biggest thing that kind of blew me away that I didn't expect was just how much admiration I would have for my wife sitting in that hospital room with her for like 12 hours and just watching every beat of what it was that she was going through. I mean, you guys talk about sport. I think you guys think you know something about sports on this show. Like it is every bit of like an athletic endeavor to deliver a child. And I watched all of it. I mean, I was on pins and needles the entire time. My wife, she, I don't know what this is about, but she chose not to take the drugs.
Oh, wow.
So you're gonna learn all about that. I think she thought it like gave her more kind of street cred and more like ability to experience what it is to be a mother. And so I'm like just witnessing all this pain by viewing what she's going through. And then at the very end of it, this little child comes out and she is like immediately joyful. And so that whole experience, like I will never forget it. All the cliches are true. It changed my life. It gave me like newfound appreciation for my wife. And it's, I don't know how women do it more than once, honestly.
Okay, so with the labor as sport metaphor that we should probably get killed for at some point after the dad pod. So just like Andy, like being in the room, like there are little things along the way that are like the dad jobs, like we putting together the crib, or, you know, at a baby shower, she got a stroller, so you have to assemble the stroller. So there's some of those like dad events along the way. But I remember listening to Mike and Mike in the morning, and they had the debate of, when you're a new dad, should you go above the equator or below the equator? Like, how much should the dad know? I'll never forget that because it was right around the time Grace was born. And I just remember holding Julia's hand as she was going through everything. And, you know, she's pushing out this child. And I was going, come on. Yeah. Dig. Like, I was like, I don't know if she was running the bases or what I was cheering for, but like I was in her ear like the coach pumping her up. And I'm like, go. You can do it. Go. Oh my God. I think she wanted to hit me.
In the moment, Tom, that makes perfect sense to me though. Like that's your job.
Yep.
I got to think you played that role pretty well, Tom. Like you're a pretty good support system. You know, you're a hell of a middle school football coach, so I got to imagine you're pretty good in the room as well during delivery.
I think, again, for something to keep the metaphor going, to get killed for this, I think it translates. I think 8th grade football coaching sideline work. I did make the fatal cliche error, though. I think at one point I talked about either how tired I was or that my feet hurt or something as my wife's like, you know, going through labor. I think I made some kind of comment, and then, yeah, but once that baby comes, the mom, like a switch turns and she just becomes mom, and she's holding the baby, and she is like, after everything she went through, it's like all of a sudden, boom, she's in the role.
So obviously the moms have all of the heavy lifting, obviously the first 9 months, then obviously through labor, you know, most of the early nights, you know, the mom is doing most of the work, especially if you're doing breastfeeding, at least from what I've heard, right? So far from talking with people. So you two guys, though, when did you feel like you earned your stripes as a dad? Because the mom does all the stuff early on, right? But when did you feel like, man, I'm finally earning my keep now as a dad?
Some of those early diapers are absolutely disgusting. So like those first poops, it's called like meconium or something, and it is nasty. So there's some of those weird, you know, changing your first nasty diaper of your own kid. And there's something about it, like it's less gross when it's your kid changing a diaper. I don't know. I think you just get used to it. But like my like welcome to the show moment honestly came on that like first day out of the hospital. When you leave the hospital, they do like a safety check, right? Like you have to have the right car seat. It has to be strapped in the right way. And we drove home from the hospital, and I swear to God, it was like the movie Speed. I was white knuckles, like as stressed as I could be, watching the rear view mirror, making sure baby was okay. Julia sat in the back seat, I think, and we drove probably 1 mile an hour under the speed limit the entire way home. Like I felt so stressed, like I have to protect this car. Like that was like my I'm a dad moment, I think, like that first drive home from the hospital.
That comes pretty early then. I was expecting this to come a little later. Andy, did it come that early for you?
There's a couple moments like that. The first one I thought of, Tim, was when Leo was maybe around like 20 months. So over the summer, I was like fastening something to the side of my house, like a rail, and I was using a power drill. And Leo's got this little plastic workbench with tools, and he's got a battery powered drill. And I'm out there working on it. He's kind of observing everything I'm doing, and he's got his nose and everything. He goes inside the house. He comes back out with his power drill, and he starts drilling in the holes that I had just been working on. And I was so proud. It was one of those moments where it was the first time I recognized him like trying to copy what I was doing. And ever since then, he'll take out his plastic screwdriver, his plastic hammer, every time I'm working on something, and it's just the best.
That's awesome.
That is cool. My next question was going to be like, to that point, like when do kids start doing fun stuff? Tom, you have like an almost 10-year-old now. You know, Leo's obviously, he's getting the tools out. So, you know, Leo's pretty advanced. But at what age do they start doing things that as a parent you're saying like, oh, this is fun for me. It's not just eating, sleeping, pooping on repeat over and over again.
Oh man, that's the first time that they start smiling on purpose. Like that's when you start to get a little bit of like affection back from them and stuff, a little bit of engagement. But like, you know, when they start walking and talking and you can kind of throw a ball with them and stuff, like that gets to be more engaging. But like today in the driveway, my almost 9-year-old and my 5-year-old want to play basketball, and we're playing like 2-on-1, and you know they're like talking trash, and I mean like that stuff's really fun. and you know like they want to beat you, and like yeah, I think there's these little milestones all along the way where they go from being like totally dependent on you to like you get to play around with them as opposed to like play for them, and that's so fun.
Yeah, Tim, I think what you'll learn though is even that question is a little misleading, because what you're going to find with your kid is that it's day one for him, because your child is going to be opening his eyes, and you're going to think that's amazing. Yeah. He's going to lift up his hand, and like you're going to say, look, he lifted his hand. And so like every little thing he does is going to make you proud. And so, you know, the stuff you're talking about, like when is he going to actually start to be interactive and want to play with you? Like that's maybe 6 months or something like that. But like the crazy thing is like every stupid thing that they do, even prior to like being interactive, still just makes you like a proud dad anyway.
Totally.
So that brings up my next point, Andy, is how hard is it to admit to yourself that your child is not exceptional? Because the danger is, I think we're seeing it more and more in modern society, is that everybody thinks not only they are the greatest, but also their kids are the greatest. And, you know I'm going to be this way in like 6 months. I think I'm going to have a very advanced child. And in reality, my kid's going to be like right smack dab in the middle of mediocrity. But how hard is it to like admit to yourself that like your child is not the best?
Yeah, honestly, like, I might be there, Tim, because like I look at Leo, he's 2 years old, and it's like he still doesn't really know how to swing the baseball bat. He still doesn't know what hand to throw with. And so that's like a lot of that is still up in the air. But the way you get around it is you look like my kid, for example, you look at him start running, and you're like, he's an exceptional sprinter. So you're looking for areas where you know he's exceptional. And so, I don't know, like Ginevra and I, we make fun of all those parents that are like, the Tiger parents, and they think their kids are like geniuses and stuff like that. But I'm not exactly sure if that's not going to become me. So I don't know if I have a lot to offer there.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching the Masters this past weekend, and of course, it was a Tiger love fest, as the Masters is most years. And they played that video of Earl Woods, and Earl Woods was, I don't know if you guys saw this, he was giving a speech about how Tiger Woods was Earl Woods' gift to the world. And Earl Woods was telling the people, like, do not spoil this gift to the world, as if he was like talking about, Jesus Christ or something. Right. And it's funny because like Tiger Woods has made modern golf, and Tiger Woods kind of lived up to Earl Woods' expectations, as crazy as that is. I mean, he's not Jesus Christ, but he's the greatest golfer we've seen since Jack Nicklaus. But there are also a million other parents that are also like Earl Woods, and their kids, aren't Tiger.
I think so. I haven't gotten to this moment yet because my kids are still exceptional. I'm still pretty convinced. No. But we did sign Gracie up for one of those U2 traveling soccer teams. You got to be under 2 years old. And then I'm just kidding. That probably exists somewhere. No, I think it's like you play with them and stuff. And I know like Gracie first picked up a softball bat. She hit left-handed and threw right-handed. I'm like, all right, let's go. And my wife kept being
How
like,
old, Tom?
She was like 3.5 because she was doing like bam, bam. It was like bam, bam ball or, whatever. Like it's crazy, but it's fun. The kids like it. And it's really low engaged, like stress. It's not like a real baseball league or something. But my wife was like, she's right-handed. Why is she hitting left-handed? I'm like, do not change it. Let it go. Well, since then she's decided she's right-handed now. So she hits right-handed, but it's just so funny because you see those moments and you're like, yes, look, oh, Jack's got pretty good balance. Maybe that means something. And you're like looking for that opportunity, like Andy said.
So Tom, you've got more experience in this than Andy, but is it a challenge to like get your kids to like the same things that you do?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny because so the things I love, like I love the Hawkeyes. I love the Green Bay Packers, and then Jules and I like competition. Like, so Iowa State basketball comes on and Julia's like, an avid fan and, so we just like sports. So it's easy that they like the Hawkeyes, they like the Packers, they like the Cyclones because we buy them the shirt or the t-shirt or, you watch the game, you get that stuff. But it's so funny because my oldest, like, she's pretty athletic. She's going to be a good runner. I really do believe that. She's pretty athletic, but like, she has no competitive, like, I'm going to go for the win here. And so that's like, it's more that she likes sports, but it's like, how do we get her to like elbow that girl and like steal the soccer ball? Like, go for the rebound, that kind of moment where she pulls back. And how do you get them to like get the competitive side? They love sports, which is super fun.
Tom, is that competitive side different for Jack? Because obviously you have 2 girls and a boy. So like, is it different with Jack than it is for Emmy and Grace?
Jack is definitely more aggressive. Like he is definitely like, even tonight we were watching a Christmas movie as a family and they were all so excited about this moment in the movie. They started jumping around or whatever. It was hilarious. But then when Jack goes in to hug the 2-year-old Emmy, like it turns into a tackle. Like he is just so physical. And I'm definitely more physical with him. Like we wrestle around and stuff a little bit more, but like, I don't think that's going to be a concern. I think if he wants the soccer ball when he's, playing little kid soccer, he's going to elbow into somebody and he's not going to be afraid of that moment. He likes wrestling. He's done a little bit of wrestling activity stuff where he'll be pretty aggressive. But yeah, it's like, maybe it's partially how we like interact with him, but yeah, he's got it. I don't know if the girls have that edge, that competitive edge, but Jack definitely doesn't mind getting his head bumped and knocked around.
Andy, I know Leo's just 2, but have you already started with the indoctrination of Iowa State, Minnesota Twins, all that stuff?
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough living in Kansas City. I don't know how to relate to what he's going to be going through because on the one hand, like I can raise him in the bubble and the poor kid's been in quarantine for like 25% of his life. So in a sense, he is in the bubble and we can put all the games on now on TV and all that stuff. But on the other hand, like, his friends are going to, not care at all about Iowa State,
Right.
football and basketball, or the Minnesota Twins. Actually the Royals are the big ticket here in town. So we're working on it. He can say go Cyclones. He knows what football is. I'm working on telling him about how the black uniforms are not authentic, but there's a ways to go with that.
So one of the things, as I was preparing for this episode, part of the reason why I think it's easy for us to do this episode is because, like, Andy, you and I, we have a great dad. We had two great grandfathers that were, heavily present in our life. Obviously, our mom's dad, Hans, is still, heavily present in our life. Same with our dad,
Moonlighter.
Tom. What's that?
Moonlight.
Yeah,
Hans
two Moonlighters
Moonlighter.
there. And then Tom, Dick Griffin, just an awesome guy, still's an awesome guy and was an awesome dad to you. And so as I'm getting ready for this, I'm like writing down things that I remember my dad saying to me when I was a kid. And I think the first thing that came into my mind when I thought about like Grandpa Hans and Dad was like, they never, at least that I can remember, denied like a game of catch or like playing with me outside. Like, especially my grandpa was like, whenever I was over there, I had to be so annoying as a kid, and he would always go outside and play with me. And as a kid, you guys know this, all I wanted to do was play. Like, my whole world was sports when I was a little kid. But, some of the other things that I wrote down, and I'm curious to, your guys' memories of things you remember from your dad when you were a kid, was most of my stuff is sports related because, my dad was my coach for most of the time. So like the first thing I wrote down was never make the first or third out at third. Never give up baseline in basketball. You always got to pressure the ball. My dad used to have this saying about going down looking, striking out looking. And I'm not going to repeat that now because it's just something that should just never be said to a fourth grader. And, also, my dad was a very impatient driver, something that I'm also impatient on. So whenever like somebody would cut him off, he would say, "Come on, guy." And that's something that I still do today. If somebody cuts me off, I say, "Come on, guy." He'd always say, "Sit up straight, shoulders back." One thing that my dad and my mom did was if I'm like on a Saturday morning in high school, I would walk downstairs at like 9:00 in the morning. Like that was sleeping in. My parents would say good afternoon to me as if I was sleeping in till like 1 in the afternoon. And really it was like 8:30 in the morning. A couple of other things that were like, my dad, I was thinking about like the birds and the bees talk and like the don't drink talk. Andy, maybe you remember this differently, but I don't remember Dad ever having like a birds and the bees talk with us. And I don't remember him having like a drinking talk with us, but I do remember like when we were in middle school, he came home from work with a story about seeing kids from St. Ed's buying cigarettes at Casey's. And I think he made the story up just to get the point across that like we weren't supposed to smoke cigarettes. And we were also like old enough at that point where like we were well past the age of like knowing that cigarettes were harmful. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I think one other thing that I wrote down about my dad, and this goes for my mom as well, is that they had great taste in music. And Tom, you remember like when we were young, we would drive around in my dad's car, like after batting practice,
Yes.
like the Van Halen greatest hits and Garth Brooks greatest hits, and like a bunch of oldies songs. And I was just watching the Queen's Gambit on Netflix with Tori this past week, and it's got a great soundtrack, all songs from like the 50s and 60s. And I knew the words to every one of the songs. And I give my dad credit for having a great taste in music. But so those are like the things that I wrote down about like lasting kind of fun things that my dad left me. Obviously, there's way more, but those were kind of the first lighthearted things. Tom, what do you have from, a childhood with Dick Griffin?
Well, so my dad and I have a great relationship, and but one that stuck about my grandpa's, like my dad's dad, Grandpa Griffin. I can remember going to the farm outside of Jefferson, and where my dad grew up was Peyton. And when you went to Grandpa Griffin's farm, if you went outside, you worked with Grandpa Griffin. If you stayed inside, you got to play games with grandma, like, and have ice cream and like watch TV and hide. So I just remember that, like, when you would go to Grandpa Griffin's farm, like, there was always something to do, even though Grandpa was like 80. You know what I mean? He was old. He was mid 70s, late 70s. So I think he just found work for you to do, you know? So I just remember that mentality of, like, if you're with Grandpa, you're working, and you got to drive the lawnmowers and stuff like that. With my Grandpa Condon, my mom's dad, he babysat me when we had half day kindergarten. So we got to be super close, and we would play slapjack all the time. You know, it's just funny. Like, I just remember he would never turn me down for a game of slapjack. So I do have those, like, kind of memories. Like, and I think you get kind of like a stereotype in your head of what they're like, and you like expand that out. So like Grandpa Condon, we'd drive around in the truck. You know, we'd drive out to Claire and see what was going on in the fields, you know, that kind of stuff. But my dad, same kind of thing with, I can just remember playing catch with my dad. And it's funny you mentioned cigarettes, because my dad smoked when he was younger. And I can remember him smoking, and we would play catch in the backyard when he would get home from work. And you know, he'd take a drag and like put it in, and then he'd throw the ball. And he'd always call the glove a pud. And we've talked about this before, but like, I can just remember that he played catcher and I was a catcher. And so we always had that kind of stuff. He didn't wrestle because they didn't have that in his school, but I can just remember my dad always trying to like kind of you know, push me a little bit, challenge me a little bit, try to like toughen me up, tough love. But like, the one thing I can definitely take from my dad, no one's going to confuse my dad as having someone with a really, really long fuse, right? He is a good guy. He's a fun guy. He's a fun grandpa. But like, there would be days where he'd like, you know, snap at you over something small or whatever. And that would happen. But the first day I was driving, I got in a car accident. I hit a parked car with my junker. I hit Ryan Garrett's like nice Chrysler Sebring. I'm sure you probably remember this. And I'm driving a junker, and I was terrified. I thought my dad was going to kill me. I thought he was going to be so mad at me. And I just was so worried about like, what do you do? I had no idea what you did when you had a car accident, whatever. And I just never forget when my dad came home, like, instead of getting mad at me, he was like immediately calm. And he just goes, well, that's what insurance is for. You know, that was like the first thing he said to me. And he was like, are you okay? And, you know, everything's okay. Nobody got hurt. That's what insurance is for. And so that just really, like, that memory sticks out really crystal clear to me, because it was like, you know, I was worried about the car and I was worried about all this other stuff. And like, instead of getting mad, he like got calm. And I just think, like, as a dad moment, like, to me, that's a really good dad moment, you know, that he like had a priority system there, that value that was really clear.
Yeah. Tom, one lasting memory I have of your dad, and when we were young, is that, you know, you were always the catcher and I was always the pitcher. And we had a lot of innings together on the mound and behind the plate. And whenever I was falling apart on the mound, Dick Griffin from the stands would go, talk to him, Tommy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so it was always like, and then that would be the cue for Tom to come out and have a mound visit with me. So I always knew when things were really falling apart for me, like Dick Griffin was the first guy to call it out. Tom, talk to him. Flattery's falling apart out there.
That is hilarious. I remember that.
Well, and then you bring up like the farm stories too. That was like our Grandpa Flattery. The way you describe your Grandpa Condon's farm was kind of our farm as well. Like, we'd be outside walking beans with Grandpa Flattery, and he would always like to bean walk with us. And that was his way of like catching up with us. You know, we'd walk beans for hours, Andy and I and Grandpa and maybe Michael Flattery too. And that would be his way of like time with Grandpa to talk about, like, get caught up on life and stuff. And then inside we'd play Pollyanna or cards with Grandma. And Grandma Flattery was just a ruthless competitor. Andy, what are your takeaways from, you know, growing up? What are like your lasting takeaways from Dad and from Grandpa when you were growing up?
Yeah, what you just made me think of there, and one of the things I was thinking of is how, and maybe this is every kid who's got a dad who never misses a game. You're like, your audience is your dad. Like, you're playing for your dad. I don't know, maybe when you're like in high school, you're playing for the girls in the stands, but really, like, if you know where your dad's at in the gym. And so one of the things that I think, Tim, our dad was doing a lot was like, he was like, you guys know how Bill Simmons talks about like the body language doctor?
Oh yeah.
So when Bill Simmons goes to games, he'll talk about how he just likes to watch the body language of the players, like on the sidelines and on the bench. And I always just envisioned Dad just analyzing every bit of our body language and taking inventory of what was going on, and just dissecting every little thing that we did. And so like for us, the way that I think of like dad analyzing the body language is he wouldn't so much care if you were showing like anger or frustration or like even fire, like that was good. I mean, he might counsel you to say, don't show so much emotion. But what really got under dad's skin was when you showed like ego, or you thought you were better than someone, or you thought you were cool out in the field. Like that really was something that you did not want your dad to see. Our dad to see, especially.
I think I was like the king of the "Who do you think you are" speech when I was a kid. Like I got the "Who do you think you are" speech 100 times when I was little.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a million things, and obviously there's a million things I admire both my grandpas for. There's a million things I admire my dad for, and a million things I admire my mom for as well. Don't mean to forget about her, but I guess since we're a sports podcast, that's why I wanted to, talk some about these sports things. But as we get older in our dad years, guys, Andy, you've been a dad for, over 2 years now. Tom, you've been a dad for going on 10 years now. What are some of the dad stereotypes that you guys have found yourself falling into that maybe when you were in your early 20s, or you thought, no way am I ever going to be like that guy? And now here we are in our mid 30s and you are that guy.
I think the ultimate cliche is the minivan. Like there's like a moment from when Jules and I were dating, and we were driving up to Minnesota to visit family, and we're on I-35 and a minivan passes us. And I distinctly said, not a minivan, as this car's passing us. And Julia likes to remind me of that because we got a Toyota Sienna.
That's a great car.
I freaking love our minivan. It is the best vehicle you could ever buy. I encourage everyone with kids to buy a minivan. They can't door ding the car next to you. It's like a living room, man. You got so much space in there. You got the TV thing, the movie. Oh my God. I love our minivan. Like that's probably my ultimate like dad move now that like I never thought. I love it.
Ando, what about you?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that happened almost immediately as soon as we got pregnant is I found myself becoming that curmudgeon that just bitches about everything about the world that my kid lives in. So like when we got pregnant, I started to notice like all the pregnancy announcements and like all of the elaborate schemes that people do to like put those on Instagram. And of course, like I have a lot of thoughts about that. And the other day I'm like, it's election Tuesday, and we took Leo to the polling place to vote. And then there's a park just outside the polling place. And so we're playing with him in the park for a little while. And just across the street, there's a daycare, and the folks at the daycare are parading out all of the little 3-year-olds with signs that say like, go vote and stuff like that. And for no reason at all, I find myself just getting pissed. Like just thinking to myself, like you're just using these kids. They have no idea what's going on. You're doing it for the Instagram photo. And like, this is like a daily occurrence for me that I find myself becoming more and more of like the curmudgeon dad.
Oh my gosh. I think another one is like being a dad is like seriously probably 95% utility. Like moms run the show. Moms are the real superheroes. Every kid's favorite is their mom. Like moms are like it, right? And so we're just like there as like the supporting. We are the underdog. We are the Moonlight Graham of parenting, if you will. And so like cargo shorts. Like cargo shorts are a necessary dad thing because you got to like load up those pockets like with whatever people give you. You got the stuff that they drop, the snacks, the treats, a pacifier, wipes, a diaper. Like that's like another like dad cliche. Like it's just a convenience thing, and that's really your job is to be there to support the crew.
You know what that's going to change though, Tom? In a couple of years when Gracie's old enough that the little boys start to notice her, the little like 14-year-old boys, that's when dad steps in, or when Jack, is 15 and him and his buddies are going to Casey's and one of his buddies is buying those cigarettes. That's when dad is really going to step in and you're the guy at that point.
Oh, that brings up a good point. What about discipline here? Like Tom, I'm sure you've had to do a little bit more discipline than Andy, because I don't know how much you can discipline like a 2-year-old, but how have you dealt with like disciplining your kids?
Oh my gosh. So this is so funny. I think, having a daughter first, like that shapes a lot of things, because she's like a little angel and she's a super good listener and stuff. She really is. And there is 100%, there is a wait till your dad gets home kind of vibe sometimes. And sometimes Julia will even tell me, she's like, you need to be really upset when you come home. So I don't even know what's going on. I'll just come in the house and be like, I heard you have a story to tell me. And I'll get like my dad voice and a sharp look on my face and that kind of thing. But like having the ornery son second, like the cliche discipline thing, controversial topic is spanking, right? Like,
right.
Do you spank? Do you not spank? And so like with Jack, it was like, he was pretty ornery for a little while. And we're like, do we spank it? Like Jules and I have the conversation, like, do we do it? Like, I don't know. Should we try it? See if it works? Like, and so I remember we did like the one swat over the diaper, not like a bare bottom thing. And it's like, he hated it. I hated it, but it was like, okay, that doesn't work. Like that doesn't change anything. So we don't spank or anything. We try not to like ever yell. Like I'll raise my voice and stuff, but like we don't yell at the kids. But there is definitely like a dad's the jerk, dad's the hard guy sometime when business, has to get done. But Julia, she's stay-at-home mom and she's a former elementary school teacher. So she is like so good at that stuff. She runs a pretty tight ship. So I don't like have to like do that very often. And she does a great job with discipline. But there is a little bit of that cliche, like wait till your dad gets home and then kids.
Yeah. Andy, does Leo fear you yet?
Yeah, Tom, I'm learning from you here, because I have nothing to offer to this, because I don't even know what my 2-year-old is doing wrong. So like last night, Leo is he's brushing his teeth and he's walking around the house while he's brushing his teeth, which I do too. And my wife, she scolds him for it because he's not supposed to be doing that. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a rule that we had for Leo and that I was supposed to scold him. So it's almost like she's like, my wife is kind of more speaking the language of a baby, and I'm kind of still figuring it out. But eventually when he starts, trying to buy those cigarettes, that's where I'm really going to step in and lay down the hammer. Oh my gosh.
So have you guys, I'm already pretty sappy, right? Like I watched Field of Dreams. I can't, I know it's coming. I'm already in tears. I tried to listen to the song Butterfly Kisses last week. I made it like 48 seconds into that song. And that's about a dad and a daughter. And I couldn't finish the song. Tori walked in on me and she's like, what is happening here? And,
pregnancy hormones. So is that what you told her?
Have you guys noticed you've gotten more sappy being that you're dads?
Have you guys ever seen the Josiah Vieira story?
Yeah.
The ESPN kid. Yeah, Tim, just like you, I'm watching that the other day actually, and it's a story about this little kid. It's ESPN has ran a couple pieces on him over the years, but it's a little kid who he's like 25 pounds. He's got some sort of congenital condition where he can't grow, but he loves baseball. He can barely swing a baseball bat. He was like 8 years old. He had arthritis and he could barely run, but like the only thing he wants to do in the world is play baseball. Anyway, like I'm watching this for like the third time the other day, and the mom's talking about how it's so hard to know that you're going to outlive your child. And I'm just dying. Oh yeah. And Tim, you're sappier than I am, but like, I can't get through that without just, thinking of it from like the father's point of view. So 100%, it takes it up a notch. You can't look at stuff around the house and worry about your kid, like touching the saw or touching the sharp knife the same way again. It takes it to a whole nother level.
Totally. I think being a dad makes you way sappier because you like empathize with everything. Like that moment, you find out you're going to have a baby, you get so excited. And then like the love just grows and grows and grows. And then you start thinking about everything. You think about their future. And, like Gracie went through a phase where we would get married in the living room and we would dance, like all that. And so then when you hear songs like, or see movies, or anytime you hear sad stories about like a kid that's sick or some kind of issue, oh my God, it just kills you because you just empathize with everything. I have definitely gotten much sappier. I started crying a little bit the other day hearing somebody else's story about a sick baby. And my wife looks at me, she's like, are you tearing up? And I'm like, that was a tough one. Yeah, it definitely makes you sappier for sure. So Tim, you're going to be a mess.
I know. I'm already kind of a mess just thinking about it. Like just the thought of a parent loving a child, like just the thought of it makes me want to cry.
I'm looking at you in the screen. And it looks like you have tears welling up.
I do.
Right
the Josiah thing killed. Like,
oh yeah,
I can't watch that anymore. It's
Tom,
like,
have you seen that?
I haven't.
Yeah, you have to watch it.
But I would also say, like, I don't have a stomach for that stuff anymore. Like, I can't, like, when even hearing about sad stories, like, I have to, like, turn away from it because I know that it's going to bother me. Or, like, a movie where there's a tragedy or something. Like, I don't even want to watch it. I don't even want to read about it. I don't want to, like, no, I'm not talking about, like, real events. I'm talking about, like, fiction, you know?
Remember that one story of, like, the dad who had, like, the son, and he would push him in Ironmans?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Hoyts,
Yeah.
I think it was Team Hoyt. Like,
Yes.
the first time I saw that was at a work training thing. And I was just an absolute mess at work. Like, I was in a suit and tie, just, it's terrible. And like, I can't even, I can't watch that stuff anymore. And I'm not even a dad yet. I can't even imagine. Well, I am a dad, but my son's not born into the world yet.
Yeah.
So before we wrap it up, a couple last questions, guys. First of all, like, Andy, Leo is 2. Tom, you got what, 9, 5, and 2? 9, 5, and 3.
Almost 9. She's 8 still, but 8, 5, and 2.
8, 5, and 2. Okay, so 8, 5, and 2. What are you looking forward to, Tom, as a dad that you haven't experienced yet?
Well, I mean, obviously with COVID, like Jack talks about like going to see the Packers play. Like Jules and I were just talking about, like, we're going to more sporting events and more live stuff as soon as we can. Like, making those kind of, I think, experience memories, like doing things, not like buying toys, but like doing experiences. And so I'm excited to like take him to, a Hawkeye football game, like me and him doing that guys weekend kind of thing. He talks about that all the time, and he calls it a boys date, which is hilarious to me. He wants to do a boys date, a guys date. And the same thing with Gracie. Like, I'm excited to see her continue to like get into sports and stuff and get competitive, and like just to see her succeed. And like we've done some of the little kids activity stuff, so to see her like continue to grow. And like Emmy she's only 2.5, so like everything with her is hilarious. So it's like just her becoming her own person. But yeah, I think just having some of those awesome experiences, going to sporting events, we get to play catch, we get to do that stuff. I'm excited to like go golfing with Gracie, like a real, like an 18-hole, 9-hole, like just because it would give you like a couple hours of one-on-one time and just that kind of stuff as they're like a little bit older and a little bit more ready for those. I want to do things that are like experiences, go spend time together, do something unique.
Andy, what about you? Leo just
Nice.
turned 2 here.
Yeah. And Tom, you're the best dad ever. That's awesome. Yeah, there's so much. One of the things I just pulled up on my phone, I've been making a list of all the movies I want to show Leo when he's old enough. Right now he can't sit down for more than 5 minutes, but all the stuff that I want to see him watch for the first time. And God forbid if he doesn't think like Braveheart is awesome or Tommy Boy is hilarious. But that's one of the things.
What about, guys? Okay, so turning the spotlight back on me where I like it most. We are 3 weeks out today from our due date, right? So what at this point, if you guys can think back to when you were at the point that I'm at right now, right? Before your first child, 3 weeks out from the due date, any day now, potentially, the baby could come. What advice would you have for a first-time dad?
That's a good one.
I can give you some practical stuff because this is stuff I'm thinking about right now too.
Andy, you got number 2 coming the same time.
Yeah. Tim and I we're due like what, 3 days apart, Tim?
I think it's one or 2 days apart.
Yeah. So it's so some of the things I'm thinking about. You got to do all the other stuff besides have a baby. So get your wife a nice gift. She's going to appreciate that. Like when Leo was born, I got her like a nice necklace that she wanted with, I think it was like his initials and her initials on it. We had like a cleaning lady come and clean the house, so she didn't have to worry about that. I prepared like the meals for a week.
Well,
we coordinated some friends to come bring over meals. So like, this is all the practical stuff that you should be doing. The other thing that I'm going to be boning up on more too, Tim, is like, are you going to be in the room with Tori?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. There's like all of these kind of like, I don't know what you call them, like stretches or positions that you can help your wife with while she's going through labor that were actually really helpful, because she's like in the most uncomfortable state that she'll ever be in her entire life. So I think it's called like a doula that you can hire and pay a bunch of money to. Like you're going to have to act as the doula if you're not going to hire one. And so there's ways you can like, YouTube it, figure out what some of these doula moves are.
Looks like I got some work to do. Those are really good tips, Andy. I was actually taking notes there.
That is good advice.
Tom, I'm sure you know exactly what we're talking about. You're probably a licensed doula.
It's kind of hilarious. Like the first kid, literally. So not to scare either of you. I mean, Doe, you're already there, but Gracie came 2 weeks early, and Jack came 2 weeks early. So 3 weeks away from our due date, we were 1 week away from having a baby. But it's funny. Like the first kid, I was still reading the dad books. And so it's funny because I didn't finish one of them. So there's a picture in the hospital of me reading like the last chapter of one of the dad books, holding Grace in my lap. So, the practical stuff, I was so dumb. So I was like 25 or whatever when Gracie was born. Like I was just dumb. Like I didn't know what to expect. So having your brother going through it too, I'll always, whatever you ever want to talk about, you can always call me too. But yeah, I feel like you don't know until you know. So like my best dad advice probably for getting started is like, just trust however your wife is feeling or what she's thinking and just support it, because like the baby's going to be fine. The moms know so much, like they're so in tune. Just trust. And like, just your job is like, just to support and pray a lot, but just to support and just, I don't know. I always had to remind myself, like, somehow cavemen had babies, right? And they survived. Like God makes, it's a miracle. Somehow it works. So just trust mama. She knows what to do.
Man, that is great advice from both you guys. And obviously part of the reason why I wanted to have this episode today is because you guys are both great fathers, two guys that I've looked up to for a long time, not only in just fatherhood, but also just in life. So thank you so much for Tom and Andy for joining, coming back on the pod. But before we wrap it up here, I do want to bring on the star of the show, the real MVP, who is just off the camera here. Tori, if you want to come over here to come on, she's actually crying right now because she heard how lovely Andy and Tom were talking about their wives. So Tori, you are the real MVP right now. And you have been carrying a child for 8 months, over 8 months now. So how are you feeling?
I'm excited. I feel good. Yeah. It's just all been such a blessing. And obviously, like, your body's changing a lot. I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm so excited and so happy. And I feel really good.
How uncomfortable is a little uncomfortable?
At night, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Just a lot of tossing and turning, but I know that people have it worse, so I can't complain too much. I think I've got it pretty good right now.
Are you nervous about delivery at all? Earlier when we were talking, Tom and Andy, they were comparing delivery to like a sport, to like playing a sport. And I'm only kidding. But are you nervous at all for that delivery experience? Because it's going to be something that like you've never experienced before, and it's going to be like a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous just of the unknowns, not really knowing what's going to happen. But I'm also I just want to make sure he's okay. So the baby's healthy. That's all I really care about. I can handle some pain. I know that women do this every day, every minute of every day. So I know that I can do it. I just I'm more nervous about the unknowns of how it actually is going to go down.
What are you most excited for about our little guy coming into the world and, being the mom and all of that stuff that comes with it?
I'm most excited to see what he looks like. I just, you don't know what he looks like. You feel him moving around all day. And I just can't help but picture a mini Tim. And I hope he does kind of look like you, because that's kind of what I'm picturing. But I'm so excited to just see him and hold him and, to rock him and bring him home and all the fun stuff.
So Tori, before, you got pregnant, you had just ran a half marathon, like right when you might have been pregnant actually when you ran your last half marathon, if you do the math on it. And what are you excited about, like in that post-pregnancy, getting back into shape, getting back into running? You've run a ton of marathons. You're a great athlete. You're a great runner. What part about that are you excited about?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to just get a good sweat in. I feel like kind of lame how quickly I get out of breath. I'll be doing a prenatal workout on YouTube that I find and doing arm circles, and I'm out of breath. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't. It's hard to believe that I was ran a half marathon at the very beginning of pregnancy, but I'm just excited to get back into a routine to run and to get a good sweat in.
Mm-hmm. One day maybe our child will listen to this, and I think it's just kind of a fun time for you and I to capture how we're feeling right now. And I think it's just a lot of excitement, a lot of love, and it's been fun, to go through this together. I think one of the blessings of quarantine has been that I've been able to experience the pregnancy like up close and personal. I haven't had to travel for work. We've spent almost every minute of every day together over the past 9 months, and it's been a great blessing. And I'm just so lucky to be married to you, and I'm so lucky that you're just already a great mother for our children. And so I love you very much, and thanks for coming on the pod, Tor.
I love you, Tim. You're gonna be a great dad. You already are. Thanks for doing this.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.